Thank you.
Thank you very much. If I could go to Mr. Ash first with the observation, Director Ash, that Fish and Wildlife has begun to do with the embassies exactly what we've had the DEA or FBI do in the past, which is to say, you're starting to station. I guess in Thailand you've done this. We're trying in sub-Saharan Africa. I guess it's in the paperwork to get one of your agents in the embassy there. I wonder, and I think it's in Tanzania that you're focused on that. Is there anything Congress could do to help expedite that, get that in place, get those agents on the ground in the embassies?
I think, as you said, with the help of the State Department and USAID, we've had success. We'll have our first law enforcement agent stationed in Bangkok later this month. We're working with the State Department. Our goal through the end of this year is to have 2 agents in Africa, 2 agents in Asia, and 1 agent in Latin America. And I think that the most important thing for Congress, obviously, is to provide the financial support for that. We did receive an increase in the most recent appropriations bill. We would hope to receive additional funding in the coming year to provide further support for this effort and encouragement, of course, Mr. Chairman.
When we checked in on Tanzania, what was the holdup at State on that? Do you know offhand, or?
I do not know the particular holdup.
If there's anything we can do to expedite that.
Tanzania is actually what we're trying to do is station an expert in Tanzania. That's not a law enforcement. At this point, Tanzania has not requested law enforcement assistance, so a little bit different situation in Tanzania.
Likewise, most of us have been out there to talk to the head of state and to the legislature. I know Karen Bass makes frequent trips to that area, so if there's anything we can do with their legislature or their executive branch to elicit that request, especially given what's being looted out of, trafficked out of Tanzania, we'd be happy to do that. I'm curious on another subject, since the Attorney General and the Secretary of State consult with the Treasury Secretary on the designation process, there's existing authority to go after transnational criminal organizations that could be used here, because the Treasury Department has the ability to sanction property, sanction assets of transnational criminal organizations. So how would the Department of Justice request to Congress to place wildlife trafficking as a predicate crime for money laundering, bolster the effort in to attack the financing aspect of this, if you feel that's important, and if you do, is it possible from the panel here that we might get legislative language to do exactly what DOJ suggests here? Can you get me that draft language?
Mr. Chairman, we welcome your interest in this, and we would be happy to work very closely with the committee to try to develop language. The national strategy does ask for help from Congress. We are seeking to have the same law enforcement tools that we have available to us to combat other very serious forms of transnational crime. And for wildlife trafficking, some of those tools are more limited than we would benefit from, including in particular making wildlife trafficking a predicate offense for money laundering charges. We would also seek help in getting clarification of our authority for asset forfeiture in cases where the predicate offenses were wildlife trafficking. We really want to try to take the profit out of this crime. But, Mr. Chairman, we would be happy to work with the committee and as closely as we can.
That language would be very helpful and very welcomed, I think, by the committee, and we'd work to work that out and move it quickly. Local community-based conservation was the other aspect of this that I wanted to ask you about. When I was chair of the Africa Subcommittee, one of the trips we took with Secretary Colin Powell was to Central Africa. We spent time there with Michael Fay, National Geographic explorer in residence, who explained to us the critical importance of supporting on-the-ground local actors who are on the front lines of this fight, who have a stake in the fight, and realizing the impact that local community engagement could bring to conservation, we went forward and authored the Congo Basin Forest Partnership Act. Now, with our wildlife trafficking crisis, what unique role does community-based conservation play, and what is their potential here for reducing wildlife poaching, and how could we better work with these local community groups who now have a stakeholder, right, in through their sustainable development practices of basically monitoring the population there, the elephant populations and so forth. How might we be able to work with those community-based organizations? Director Ash.
Again, I think working collaboratively is the key to that, and that's this the power in this all-of-government approach. Certainly, we have had within the Fish and Wildlife Service, within our international affairs program, we have for decades now focused on building capacity within range state nations, and I think that that's what we have to do, and we have to build a local incentive for the conservation of these species, and the State Department has been a great partner in that effort. Again, it's resource limited. We have great NGO partners, many of whom will be stepping up their efforts as well. But I think what you referenced, Mr. Chairman, is the key, that we have to work at the community level. We have to build capacity, law enforcement, economic development capacity related to these issues. We can't do that. Any one of us cannot do that alone. We have to do that together. We have to have many, many more resources to get the job done.
The last issue I was going to ask your collective support for is an aspect that wasn't mentioned in the strategy, and that's the role of the Defense Department. Many of the park rangers in these African countries don't have the capacity to fend off poachers because they're outgunned, and many of these African countries depend on their militaries, frankly. They use the military there to protect the wildlife and to protect the borders. So the DoD has a long relationship with some of these armed forces. Leveraging those relationships by having them provide the training to these military forces or advising them could be very, very helpful in combating poaching. But I can tell you there's been a lot of pushback from the DoD in the past when I've talked to them about this or we've surfaced this issue. I think it would be very helpful if the three of you would sort of expand this strategy to include that component, because if we're serious about preparing these park rangers, they're going to need a little bit more help than just what we're talking about here. You're going to have to bump it up, and I think you're going to find that the DoD has provided technical assistance to African armed forces. It would just be changing the attitudes in DoD to get them to understand that this is part of subverting transnational crime and some of these terrorist groups and others who are benefiting out of this by cooperating. What do you think about that, Director Ash? What do the three of you think that's possible?
I think, again, the opportunity for increased intelligence capacity, increased information sharing, training on the ground can certainly be enhanced by the involvement of the U.S. Defense Department. I would say, Mr. Chairman, I think one of the tragedies in all of this is, if you'll recall, about 18 months ago, we lost a park ranger at Mount Rainier National Park in an unfortunate incident, and caused a moment of, certainly within the entire Department of the Interior, and I think within the nation as a whole, a moment of grief. Well, we see it, at one national park, Virunga National Park in the Congo, over the last decade, they have lost 100 rangers trying to protect these animals. So we need to better equip and train them, and we need to provide mechanisms of support for their families, because when those rangers are lost, that is a family income, a family that is essentially put at risk, and so we need better tools to deal with that aspect of it.
Well, what I'm trying to get you to focus on is if the DoD is going to provide technical assistance to African armed forces. If you expand this to the park rangers and get them that capacity, right now they're outgunned. So I think you need to convey that and see if you can't get us a little bit. If we can get the administration to support that, frankly, that would be very helpful, because we just went through a round here late last year on this. And so that's, I guess, what I'm asking you to do. Dr. Jones, if you could convey that and try to, the three of you rally around that, I think it'd be helpful.
If I may, Chairman, one of the strengths, I think it was, is this on now? One of the strengths of the approach that we have in the task force is that DOD is a member of this task force, and we have been in discussions with DOD and with AFRICOM. And
right.
And we will continue those.
There's no mention of the strategy or a role for the Defense Department in this document. That's why I'm pushing you. I'm saying we got pushback last year. I'm just saying, if they're outgunned, you know, you've got some people out there that can give them that capacity and the intel and sort of level the playing field. We want you to really push on that. My time's expired, and I'm going to go to Karen Bass. Thank you very much.